Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Reinventing B2B. This is a Just Global production, your friendly neighbourhood global B2B agency of the year. My name is James O'Flaherty. I'm the EVP of Growth. And today we're really excited to talk about a topic that dominates the thinking for a lot of B2B marketers, future-proofing your B2B. It's plain to see the huge scale of change in the market right now. There's so many different things to consider in what's enabling business performance through marketing. As well as the obvious presence of technology and AI, we're also going to look at how to structure for success and really getting under the skin of what a business needs in today's industry. How do you get ahead of the pack by harnessing big ideas and learning to be agile, no matter what the size of your organization is, accelerating your work into B marketing of the future? And who better to talk to today about this than recent winner of the Top 100 CMO Awards, a true B2B leader. I'm very happy to introduce Ashish Babu, CMO at TCS. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ashish.
Thank you, James. Lovely to be here.
Excellent. I don't want to get straight into it because obviously there's a big event going on at the moment, the Olympics. I just wondered if there's anything that you've noticed so far, any favourite sport that you've been watching or anything that you've just noticed about the coverage.
I think Olympics obviously gets everyone excited. I think for me, as somebody who's grown watching Olympics, for me, I think I love swimming. I think I think one of the most interesting sport. I love the athletics because that's a pure theater. And what I also like is I think the addition of rugby. I think the sevens which has come in. So it's nice to see a fest of different sports on the tap, and that's something I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been enjoying the rugby myself. Well, I was enjoying it right up until the point when I was kind of hoping Fiji would win, but France played brilliantly in the final, didn't they?
Yeah, that was brilliant. I mean, yeah. So that's also the great thing is home support, brings the best out of you. Yeah.
Totally. Before we launch into the market and the future, I'd love to ask a little bit about your history. Can you tell us a little bit about where you started from, how your career's evolved to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I, predominantly spent my life living in India. My father was in the Air Force, so I've been, shunted from one air base to another. And one of the things, I think every 3 years I was a new kid in a classroom. And I used to keep telling my dad, when is this going to end? And am I going to have a bit of a longevity or I'm going to think about a 3 year itch? And, I think my dad said, I think two simple things. He said, you're going to make new friends, you're going to adapt to them, different languages and habit, and you're going to pick a new sport because, that also. So what are you getting is, an ability to understand humans, engage with them and make better, more friends. And I think, that's been my foundation. Since then, I've done the same thing. My family feels the other way. I've lived in Bombay, Bangalore, Delhi, London. Now I live in Amsterdam. So, and one thing which I found is, you're connecting with humans in a different, level in terms of food, culture, and that I think helps you actually get through making better friends. And I think for me, I think the best part has been the sports. So I played cricket, but now I play rugby, paddle tennis, and I just, I think that's the part which I enjoy the more. So yeah, to me, that's been my background. I mean, I work in a company which is almost dominated by engineers. I'm a history grad, so I'm a bit of an outlier, but I think what it also helps me is to, bring, I would say, the fuzziness, the emotion, the sentiment. And history, I think, is a great way to learn because it repeats itself. So you learn to understand patterns. And when I work with engineers, they think black and white. So you really have to give them evidence. So it's a fun job. I mean, I enjoy what I do here.
That's cool. When we're talking about patterns, I mean, obviously we're talking about future proofing a little bit later in the piece. I wonder if there are patterns that we can apply from previous big changes in the industry, but we can get to that a little bit later. I think one thing I'd love to just find out about as well. So I know you started your new role not that long ago. So first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
What's been your kind of 90-day plan equivalent for starting this role?
Yeah, I mean, so, when you take on a new role and then you are also, trying to think about what am I going to do different or what am I going to bring, what's not being done. I believe, from a European role, I go into a global role. And the first thing I got to think about is Europe's a different continent. Latin America is different, North America is different, Australia is different. So I think for me, the most important aspect is before I jump in and start telling what people need to focus on, is for me to go understand what are the business needs. Where are we in the journey in different parts of the world? What is TCS's strength? What can TCS focus on better? And how do we build, a stronger future with our clients there? So for me, I think the first simple goal was to get to know the team better. I mean, they were my peers, now I work with them. I need to bring something which is going to help them, in their journey. And I spent almost my first, I think, 30 to 40 days just speaking with the teams, learning from them, and saying what is working and what can be improved. As that gives you a great ability to learn about everyone's a different trajectory, but there are unbelievable, stories out there. And then you start to think about is there are going to be few common objectives which we need to focus on, which is, ensuring TCS is a brand which is helping customers, discover and drive their AI journey. But also, I think it's important that TCS needs to be relevant in those markets. So that's what has been my, 30-day plan is about getting to know the team. I think the other aspect is working with the business stakeholders. Where are they in that journey? Because ultimately, they have a goal and marketing is a partner to that. So trying to understand each customer has a different behavior. Technology cycles are very different in each of the markets. Some there is a legacy, some are dominating in technology, some are early adopters. So I think that also is a key thing is having a bit of an outside-in view. And then I think my last, I would say my 30 days is still to go. I've done my 60 days is now about thinking what are the common things we could do to scale and what are the ideas which we can localize. And I think if you have that, clarity, then what you're trying to do is also getting into getting the teams together of celebrating the work. I mean, there's some great work gets done in Latin America. Can I take that work and show the colleagues in APAC and they have another buddy to talk about that work so that they can scale from what's been done? Um, so a lot of my plan has been about learning from people, speaking to the business leaders, um, and also I think going and spending time with the clients. So that's what I would bucket into. I don't have a luxury of working on a plan. I need to have a run and a change, which is what is already on the runway, which needs to be done better. And, we do it, in better than last year. And change is one of the things we need to bring, which will help us, pivot towards the future. So that is what my plan is in a way.
Have you found, just in the course of that first month and talking to the teams, was there anything that came up that maybe you weren't expecting that you've had to kind of find solutions to?
I always think about you marketing to humans. Human behaviors are different in different parts of the market. Needs are very different. And what I learned is, what we celebrated as, I'll give you a simple example is if I just look at the media landscape, you have a flourishing media sitting in US, UK, where media is dominant. You have more newspapers, you have more print. But if you look at markets such as Australia, which has just got two publications which you can sell to and sell an idea. So it's getting fragmented. So for me, really, we had to think about was, where are we going to drive more an advertorial kind of a content than a PR content? What kind of message sells rather than lumping everything is same. I mean, in some places people think AI is a partner. In some places people think AI is something I need to think about. And what I found, I think common thing in the team is they know their markets better. But I think the only part which I would love for people is to be open to new ideas because one of the challenges I always come across in a regional role is I know this better and this is what has worked. And I think that to me, yes, you are the expert, but I think there's an opportunity for you to learn from others as well. And that was a bit for me, I really had to think about and ask that question differently is, how can I help you do your job better? And how can I bring some of the best examples and ideas to you, which will help you pivot? And as marketers, I sometimes think we love our creativity and then we tend to be hoarders of our work. So, how do I inspire them to focus on, yeah, it's worked, 3 years horizon, what next? So that's been a bit of a thing which I've learned in terms of how do I help them pivot into, campaigns which are going to help them excel. So yeah, it's a big answer, but I think I just want to bring a bit of background to it.
No, I get it. And I suppose that's the flexibility element to how you work. And it kind of takes us into the other piece of this, which is agility. So being agile in our industry is sometimes a little bit easier said than done. And maybe it's easier for smaller clients or organizations that are out there listening, but trickier for huge enterprises like TCS. I mean, how has TCS embraced agility as a concept?
Again, I put back in the same way, we sell to our clients, which is run and change. Run is your legacy, change is your new tech. And for any change, you're going to bring agility. So every time we're looking to execute a new idea, that has to have a quick timeline and a shelf life. It can't be forever. So that means it needs to have an agility in thinking. One thing which I've found is if you put everybody in agile mode, teams get extremely tired. Teams are doing rather than thinking. So you got to think about a plan where you have a long distance idea which needs to come to life. Anything which you're launching new campaigns, our sports marketing activities like marathon, Formula E, they all work in agile mode because we have delivery every month on a new activity. So I think that's the way. And I also think about you need skills. Not everyone's get up for agility. You got to bring in the teams which have the ability to, have the swiftness of jumping from one project to another because they thrive on that. And there are teams who love the long distance, who are the thinkers. You want to give them time, they want to give them ability because once they think right, we get the direction right, we'll have a bigger impact. So that is what I think about the way we operate is, the new ideas need agility and the ideas which are settled, we need to have a longevity.
How do you kind of assess where marketing as a function in a business is in terms of agility in comparison to, say, the sales organization or the product organization?
I think, listen, marketing is in the front and center. A lot of the data is sitting with us, a lot of the customer satisfaction information sitting with us, a lot of the, quality and quantitative information. If you can be better, data sits with everyone, but data is like potatoes. If you don't use them, they're just sitting on a sack. So you got to build the insights and make it actionable. And the smarter marketers are who take that data, not just report the output, but talk about what impact it's going to create. And if you can get into that habit, as simple things as what are the three things our clients are saying that we need to pivot for future? And if you can bring that conversation to the business, and that's what your messaging focuses on, you make a huge leapfrog in that. So I think smarter marketers are the ones who look at the data and make it insightful and actionable. Otherwise, it's just going to be tons of data. And I think that's an opportunity for us to be a bit like a Nostradamus. I mean, seeing what is coming and how do we pivot to that. Also, I think the aspect is learning from what the peers and competitions doing, and where do we find a white space. So yeah, that to me, I think is going to be the key.
And how about in terms of the agility that you need from the business as well? Like, are there ways that you've kind of approached trying to kind of influence that agility across the business that make it easier for marketing to deploy all of that good stuff that you were just talking about?
I always say, as marketers, you gotta wear the medals. Your consistency and effort gives you permission to try new things. And once you have that rhythm, then it's easy to convince the business because they see the merit and they trust you. So I think that's something. And I think the fundamental, any campaign you want to launch, bring the customer insight. Don't say this is what we need to do. This is what we should do to engage with customers better. This is what we think, and back it up with data. I think that's a thing conversation you need to get into, not just putting a marketing plan and thinking, yeah, give me the permission to spend X amount of money. I think it has to be about the market condition, customer insight, backed with what is your strategy. I think that's a key thing. Another important aspect is you spoke about legal, finance, and everything. I think important aspect is for us is every key marketing effort which we make, we go back and create an impact report for the legal, for the finance team, and saying this is the impact we created together rather than output we created together. And you also got to be thinking, I think, marketing, legal, finance, all of us are overwhelmed. We're doing 20 other things. Everybody, comes and says this campaign needs to go out or it's going to be life and death. It's the same thing. Every contract which goes to legal, it's a life and death. I think you got to be smart about it. You can't push everything down the throat expecting. You need to pace yourself and say, hey, this is the most important thing. I'm not going to trouble you for the rest of the time, but this is important. I think it's education is very important. And you got to tell them why you got to prioritize. Otherwise, you can just, yeah, push things down the throat, and that leads to a lot of hard work.
And that kind of brings me to something else I wanted to ask about. So, from prioritization and from ensuring that you've got the right things happening in the business, just being able to enable that growth. Like we're in the business of convincing. How can we win over hearts and minds? What's more important? And you've touched on the data, and you've also talked about the kind of being a little bit more playing to the emotions. Like, how do you judge which of those is the more important of the two to kind of balance, or is it always the equilibrium that needs to exist there?
I think it's a balance of both. Ultimately, we selling to humans, and they, and especially in B2B, when someone's going to make a decision on 100 million to 200 million or a billion worth of a deal, it has to be both. It has to be about, I think, three things people care about. Can I trust you? Will you be there if things go wrong? And will you help me scale that idea? And it's consistent track record. That's what. So customers today, or if I say clients, the days are gone where, they already know what they want. They bring you in because there's a certain trust you have. You have a track record. From there on, you got to make sure how are you going to help them and their organization make that decision. And that decision is not just done by a CIO. It's actually, goes through the whole process. While CIO buys into the whole technology, the idea, which is going to help them change or pivot to the new business, ultimately, then you got to work with, it's technology. So that means skills of people. There's human resources, there's finance, there's legal, there's a board. And you have to ensure you can, run a process where they feel I'm comforted. Yes, I'm working with a partner who is rational, but also cares about the things which is important to us. And I think, that's a fundamental. Deals are not just won on numbers. Deals are won with, emotions and also, ability to trust. That's a number one factor.
Do you think B2B as an industry is getting better at that emotional side? And I ask that because, I mean, I noticed, like, you watch the TV, we talked about the Olympics earlier, you watch the ad breaks, and there are lots more B2B brands turning up in a consumer way to almost a consumer audience as well, isn't there?
I mean, one data says, the biggest sponsorships for sports is actually B2B brands.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if I give you an example of London Marathon, London Marathon is one of the most iconic marathons in the world. It's a privilege and honor for us, to be part of that. What it does is, enables 50,000 runners to run in a one day. And, there are 50,000 dreams, hustles, hard work which goes in that. And when somebody finishes that race, there's a different emotion. And that's what we get to do is not only give runners an opportunity to, you know, get the best experience of London Marathon, but we also enable through our technology that every member of their family is running with them on a digital way through their app and enjoying that moment. So imagine what you're doing is you're taking everybody on a journey of one individual, but there's a whole ecosystem of friends and family supporting. And the important aspect is, once they finish, we want to make them the heroes because they ultimately, for them, running is a sport which everybody says you do alone in a big crowd, but nobody sees the hustle, the sweat, the hard work which is gone. And once you make your customer, give them an ability to say, share your story, they actually become a great content aggregator for us because they take that story, they put it on Facebook, that's mean they're sharing with their families. They put it on LinkedIn, that's mean they're sharing with their organization. And what they give us is this ability to, become a platform which helps enable that story. So it is emotional. And once you have that medal, and the next day, everything, I mean, and I'm not a marathon runner, but I speak to everyone. They say the body hurts, everything is, it's a sweet pain. But then you think about what next? Where am I going to run next? And that's the whole thing. So, that's the emotional bit. And I always say, how you make your customers feel when they're not working and trying to pitch or, trying to pitch, but give them an atmosphere where they felt welcome, their families felt welcome, they're going to trust you longer. And that memory is going to stay forever.
Coming from a very retired marathon runner, I can confirm that it is an emotional experience. You talked about the kind of the sharing aspect of it there, and I suspect this kind of answers the question I had in my mind a little bit as well. Like, how do you measure the effectiveness of campaigns that are aimed at winning hearts and minds rather than maybe like a traditional demand generation program? How do you play that value back to the board to go to ask permission for the next sponsorship, I guess?
We obviously have a very, if I think about, if I just speak from a London Marathon point of view, maybe I'll just take that as an example, just from the metrics and, with the permission for the next big partnership. I mean, the two iconic marathons which we sponsor are New York and London. I mean, London, on a given day gets almost 16 million viewership through BBC. So that's your brand out there. Uh, Almost 50,000 runners are running in the streets of London, and they're your brand's visible with them. The other aspect is our app, which is there, gives us, close to almost 700K people download. That means we are not just working with runners, but also their family members. Uh, the other aspect which we think about, is ability to give them the best experience, which is hospitality. We activate this not just on the day of the marathon. We activate almost 3 months before. We're telling the stories of all, what are the marathon runners thinking? What kind of food they should be eating. Little things where usually you would go to an expert, but today we're making our customers the expert. The part which actually gets us, which we never thought about, was every time we're putting our content out, we talk about the whole world of ABM, account-based marketing. For us, when a customer takes our content and puts out on LinkedIn, that content engages with the whole business, the whole organization, the whole ecosystem. And that gives us a great ability to know, what kind of, personas are, engage with that content, what kind of designation, what is the C level. And that's something we discovered. We didn't have an idea. We were just facilitating a conversation. And that data gives us an ability to think about, we're not just engaging with an organization, we're engaging with an ecosystem of organizations. So that's just one example. I can get into a little more, but this is just, trial and error, which we started, but now it gives us economies of scale. In a way, dominate LinkedIn on a Sunday and a Saturday.
And how has that sponsorship impacted visibility, engagement with the brand? In fact, is probably more interesting. How does that kind of roll out when you see the results at the end of the year based off of what you do at London, at New York?
Listen, at the moment, we are overwhelmed with clients, customers who want to run marathons. So we are overwhelmed. We've just announced a new partnership with Sydney Marathon. What we found is, as a company, we want to dominate the marathon as a platform. And in the top of the mind, if you speak to any C level, any runner, they will think about TCS first, because what they get is an access to some of the most iconic marathons. And we also have something which we introduced 2 years ago, something called a Run Club, which is a very exclusive C-level network of runners. So the idea here is that if you've done the London Marathon, if you meet new mates, and if you want to go to Amsterdam, because that is a simpler marathon, you can beat a record. We will facilitate that for you. Once they've done that, they say, "Hey, yeah, who can help me go to New York?" So what we're creating is actually tribes of customers who go, and what we have is the knowledge where most of our leadership are marathon runners, so they can actually tell you, "Hey, if you're in New York, this is how you're supposed to pace." So what you're seeing at the moment is not just partnering with some of the iconic marathons, but we're also building tribes of colleagues, and then they become our best brand ambassadors, because they go and say, "Hey, I'm going to bring in new set of my mates who want to run. Can you help us?" And yeah, that's it. So a lot of it is trial and error. We've tried, it worked, and then we're looking to scale. And there are things which we've tried, which have not worked. We've said, okay, it's not going to work. So that gives us a lot of ability to dominate a platform, give the best experience in that, and foster people's ambition as a marathon runner. One aspect I'll bring in also is, in Amsterdam Marathon, we used to have something called a kids run, which was just one kilometer kids run. What it gave us an ability was our ecosystem of partners and clients actually came on a Saturday who didn't run, but they loved their kids running, and each of them got a medal. So we actually, worked with London Marathon and says, could we create a mini marathon? And we actually launched mini marathon 3 years ago. I mean, the first year I think we got 5,000 runners. Today we've got almost I think 19,000 runners, and that's the future potential of runners which we're creating for London Marathon. So it's also a lot about community building because we also get a lot of customers who don't run but would love to come and hang out at Pall Mall, enjoy watching the kids finish a marathon, get a London Marathon medal. They go to their school assemblies and they're heroes there. So it's all about building that emotional bond where every time they look at that medal, they look at a TCS London Marathon and say, "Hey, TCS, thanks. You give me a bug. What can I do next?"
That's really cool. And like one of the lines that we kind of saw in your marketing, which I think is really cool, is a passion for pushing the limits of what's possible. And all of that's definitely representative of that brand sentiment, isn't it?
I think, for us, the two things which we care about is, we're in it for long run. I always say nothing gets achieved in one day. A marathon, even though you finish in one day, there's a body of work which goes behind that. And that's what we do is, even when you talk about digital transformation, AI transformation, as a company, we've gone through every evolution of technology which has come and gone or settled. I mean, 6 years ago, I think all our marketing campaigns are focusing on digital transformation. Today, people are talking about AI transformation. In 2 years, it's going to become quantum or synthetic. So something new will come. And what we realize is technologies will come, they will have a hype cycle, but humans are always going to be there. So you got to help reskill humans and go through this technology wave. And I think marathon is a great parallel to that, is every marathon is different. So while you run, how you prepare for them and overcome is also a human endurance. So that is it. To me, that's where the passion comes in.
When you were thinking about the original kind of strategy to engage with the marathons full stop, were there any other B2B brands that were doing things that you were looking at and thinking we need to emulate that kind of an example?
There are many examples. I think one of the examples, I think IBM did very well with Wimbledon on data, telling the story of the data, which is what we, I think was a great idea for us to think about is how do I, as an organization, think about every marathon runner to have that data available to their friends and family? Is that when they're running, when are they going to finish? Which part should I go and say hi to them at Cutty Shark or X part? Because that's data on your hand in your mobile. Can we give them access to where are the bands playing? So we turn that into more consumer insight. We turn that into data which is going to help them have a better and a stronger experience. I think the other aspect was, I think, as I said, marathon as a sport, if you run a marathon, you land up at a place, you get your bib, you're like one in those 100 people standing alone and hoping, am I going to finish this? What we thought about is how do we make that sport more inclusive? So anybody who runs a London Marathon, Amsterdam, New York, they actually, we get them together, not just during the race. We create a set of, partners with them who are going to run with them so that they don't feel alone. So it's also bringing in inclusivity and a set of tribe. So when you run, you already met 10, 15, 20 people who you made friends with, you're running with them. When you finish with the same people in different. And one aspect, which I think was the most innovative aspect, which we learned is like in Amsterdam, which we host, I think we have close to 3,000 runners. We actually have teams like TCS, ABN AMRO. So that means a lot of our colleagues who work on the customer side actually partner with that organization and run together to raise for charity. So we could have an ING TCS, we could have, I'm trying to think about AXA Noble. So that is also the other thing. We've created a tribe where you're not running alone, you're running together to build for the future and you're having fun on the way. So yeah, so it's the bits and bobs of taking from others and turning into, a journey which we're constantly perfecting for the end user.
I suppose to round this out, I think the question that I will always come back to, because it's the question we're always going to have to be able to answer, is how do you measure, how do you quantify the ROI from all of these activities, from all these sponsorships, from these partnerships? How can you put a figure at the bottom of the page that says like this is the business benefit that we achieved?
Many ways. So one, each of, if I just take example of the marathons, each of these marathons happens in the most iconic cities. So what you have is an economic benefit. When you host a marathon, you have, not only, marathon runners who are coming in to run, but their friends and families. So that's a massive economic benefit to the city and to the race organizers. For our point of view, besides the social and the digital activation we do, for us, it's very clear is what has impacted the business. How many customers are running, how many prospects are running, how have, we enable their journeys, and how do they feel about TCS? It's hard to capture emotion, but the data tells us that the moment somebody says, I want to run the next marathon, we know, they've had a great engagement with TCS. So while we have 25 sets of metrics, ultimately what matters to us is how we move the needle from a brand perspective, from a business perspective, and a community perspective. And that's the three metrics we use for everything in every marathon.
Okay, so that's one kind of partnership that we're talking about, certainly in terms of the marathon and where you've done that globally. Another type of partnership that I'd be really interested to get a little bit more insight around. Can you tell me a bit more about the TCS Summit? How does this set you and your clients and partners up for success?
TCS Summit, I think is one of I think my favorite, I would say, an event and an experience because we've been on a journey, and I always say, TCS Summit, I think, is almost we started with a humble beginning. I think the first one in Brussels, where it was our thinking behind that was how do we get our customers to come and share some of their best work? How can we celebrate that work and also inspire each one of them? From then on, I think, we've almost done 15 editions. And what we found is the evolution of Summit has gone through the way technology evolutions happen. Technology 10 years used to be the back end of the business. Typically a CIO would be reporting into a CFO. And then you had the word digital transformation kick in. That means an Amazon came and said, we will deliver things faster, better, sooner. And that got everybody start thinking, most of the organizations, how do we respond to that? Which meant you suddenly were delivering everything through a mobile. I mean, somebody pressed a button and all the complexity had to just fold and make sure somebody could deliver that product on your doorstep. And that was that, 5 or 6 years prior, which I'm thinking was the evolution of digital transformation. Everybody wanted to be a digital company. Even the, let's say an aerospace or a retailer or a bank wanted to be a digital or a tech company. And what we found was we needed to pivot at the summit, bringing in inspirations of speakers who could help them understand where that journey was. So we sort of mapped a customer journey where CIO was now moving from somebody who was just doing the run to focusing on the change. Now, when that change happens, then you got to think about is you're going to be engaging with the CEO, you're going to be engaging with the board, you're going to be engaging with the regulators. You got to think about, supply chain, politics. And that's where we started to pivot and started focusing on how do we help our customers to be a C-level executive, second, somebody who, when they speak to the board, can speak in that language, who could talk about technology from a point of view of a business outcome than a technology outcome. And that's been the evolution. And since then, from just having a CIO panel, today we have heads of states who come and talk about, how the world is shaping. We have some of the best athletes of the world who come and talk about team endurance, mental fitness. How are you gonna, pivot? Because everybody has failures and everybody has success, but how do you have that constant is what you learn from athletes. And I think the other aspect is, the technology cycle is getting faster now. It's, the speed of change is getting faster. And we started to inject futurists who could come and talk about how the world is shaping. And they could talk about 10 ideas or 5 ideas, but even that one idea would be, changing the way humans interact with technology. So that's what the pivot was for Summit, is about how do we help our customers become better C-level executives, be stronger to engage with the board and a CEO? And that was the evolution of Summit.
That's cool. So how does that how have you been able to see, as well as the evolution of what the summit is for and what happens at it, in terms of the kind of the impacts down the line? Do you have a way of seeing like this is a directly correlated benefit of us running the summit? Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, it's multifold. So, one as a simple aspect, what we found was every time a customer who came back with two senior leaders saying that this is important for you, because the important aspect is for every CIO, CDO, if they could get the business and show them the possibility of technology through Summit, he or she went back with a stronger team who believed in that idea. So we saw a bigger participation of C-level executives coming in. We focused on something quite interesting, and this is insight driven, is when we had external speakers, if you get a sports personality, a futurist, a policymaker, they usually are great orators because that's what they do. They're well trained. But what we found is, technology is hard to convince and sell because people like the complexity. So we actually started to figure out that all our sessions went well, but our panels were low energy and some of the stuff on technology was low energy. So we actually went and partnered with TEDx Amsterdam because we wanted to learn how do you help somebody become a storyteller and who can in 8 minutes convince you that this is the idea which is going to change the world. And interestingly, when we did that partnership, what we wanted was an access to their storytellers and trainers. And I remember in one of the summits, I'd asked my team that could you write to some of our clients and said, if they need help, we can give them a TEDx coach. And my team said, oh, that is going to be not the best thing we should do. It's going to be, the word somebody said, it's rude to ask someone that they're not a good presenter. And I said, two things going to happen. Either they're going to say no, or they're going to say, I should think about it. There's yes and no. There's nothing more. And funnily, when we sent that, out of the five speakers, two said, yes, I'm open to it. Now, those two presentations were the simplest presentations. It didn't have diagrams, it had just visuals, and it had a story, and it was a personal story. That changed everything for us because now every customer said, I would love that. Because ultimately, what we're doing, we're turning our customers into storyteller. They don't just come and present in front of their peers, they also go and present to their board. If we can help them create that story, they have a multiplier effect. I mean, I can say out of the many customers who've spoken, three have gone on to become CI of the year in their respective countries because they did that storytelling from a profound way of saying technology is about, outcome to impact, and that was it. So, that's what we did is made customers into storytellers.
That's awesome. And look, from career advancement through technology, through to technological advancements. And you talked about keeping the intensity up. So let me try and do that with a. I'm going to have to go to my notes here because this is a technology stat that I saw the other day. Global data volume is quickly approaching 175 zettabytes, which is the functional equivalent of creating a stack of Blu-ray discs that can reach to the moon 23 times. So the question that I have here is in this data overload era, like what are you seeing in the industry in way of being able to actually manage, curate, and get value from that data?
I'll give you a simple insight. And, as I said, data is all good if you're not using it. It's just piling up. That means, you're sitting with data. Then I won't even get into the GDPR retention side that how long you can keep that data. You're going to have data to use it and get insight. So I'll relay back to a really interesting data, which we started to figure out at our summit. We said, we've done 10 years of summit. Can we figure out who have been the loyal customers? And what we found were there were like 20 customers who were repeat customers. So we went and spent time with them, and what we found in that was an unbelievable story. So I spoke to, so we have customers and their partners who come and attend, and we build an agenda for everyone. They have the ability to attend some of the big sessions, but they also have the ability to network. What we found was three of our customers actually met for the first time at Cannes, where we hosted the summit, and they became friends. They met for the first time. Since then, they've been friends for the last 15 odd years because of TCS. And they have now added new customers who are customers of customers who, and what has become is that is the loyal customer who, because of their, partners, they want to come to TCS and they say, hey, TCS, where are you going to take us next? Because we want to come and, meet our friends together. And to me, in a B2B cycle, we don't do that enough. We need to figure out who are your loyal customers, how can you reward them, how can you give them the best experience, but also use them as we use them as, as a partner. I'm saying, okay, you've been to all the summits, where should we go next? What do you think? Who is the speaker we should get? And I'm telling you, the permission to ask silly questions, they love it. And once, because I think they feel invested in that.
Yeah.
They've seen it, they're a critique, but they're a friendly critique, and they want you to succeed. And I've had so many CIOs who said, hey, Ashish, where are we going to go next? And I'm saying, which is your favorite city? Why should we go? And then once we go there, and they're saying, thank you. I appreciate you heard. So for me, I always think about is treat customers like family, look after them well, feed them well, make them feel good about, and turn them into heroes. And that model is the data has to tell the insight, and then you have to have an actionable, actions. Otherwise, you're just sitting with data. No
That's
point being the smartest geek without ability to make that idea work.
that's really cool. That's really cool. Hey, look, we've managed to get this far into the conversation about future proofing B2B without really touching on AI. I think we should probably talk about that here. Like how should we take advantage of AI? Like what are the responsibilities here? Like how does this actually work for business so that they're using AI ethically, do you think?
I think one as a leader, and I say this to every peer, is don't outsource AI to just your colleagues. You gotta be somebody who's embracing AI every day. You gotta be using those apps. You gotta try new things, and otherwise, what you're gonna do is you're gonna be far away delegating, and then staying away from the magic what it gets you to. To me, I think I'm excited about AI from multiple fronts. Is one is I think for once B2B can think about Hollywood type of production. If not close, we can think about it. So, we are producing content every day, putting it out on LinkedIn and targeting our customers. How do we bring that content which is gonna get them to say, I love this. It has emotions, it has a laughter. So I think that's what I'm excited about. The other aspect which I love about is personas. I mean, I remember when we used to talk about, everybody used to talk about digital marketing personas of CIOs, chief digital, chief security. I'm able to generate that in span of 30 seconds using an AI. It may not be perfect, but I am able to sample and improve that. That means your ability to get insights is quicker. And I think the third aspect is just the ability to think about the profound effect it's going to have. So try, keep failing, and scale what is working. So those are the things I would think about. But also on the flip side, I also think is don't get into a habit of delegating everything to AI, because then what will happen is you will start to lose intellect within your team. You will start to give out all the ideas, and your team will have nothing but executors who will then just delegate everything to AI. And I think it's a human and machine has to work together, not just machine working for you.
Is there a particular example of how you've used AI?
I'll give you a simple example is, most of our social media content today is automated because it's easier. I mean, today posts are done, everything is done. But then once we started to, we loved it because, then we had colleagues who had more time to think about creativity. They could get out in the field. They were not sitting and working exhaustive calendars. But we also started to find, like in a month's time, that that content looked repeatable because AI writes in a certain way. So it's got the lovely flowery language, and that gets predictable after a while. So then we started to realize that I think we are, giving too much to AI without thinking we need a good human writer. So it has to be an assistant, but it can't be the editor. And that's the part which we started to now pull back and say that there is again, stuff which we're going to do in scale can be AI, but if we have to convince, we have to do high quality content that has to be human. So those are the examples. Every day we're learning something new. From also, like, people are using voice translation. They're getting common now. Every voice translation looks the same. If you look at TikTok, every uses the same version. And then you're saying, hang on, I've heard this, I've heard this, I've heard this. And so I think as humans, we will become better, how do I say, somebody who can spot an AI voice, somebody can spot an AI graphic, and we know this is AI. So I think that's one pivot which is going to start to happen in our lives. And I think we got to get the balance right. Otherwise, it's a rabbit hole.
We started talking about agility, and I think we're kind of ending with what the technology can provide us, the means to be more agile. I think that's the key benefit that we're all starting to find from the technology.
I think agility, but I also think creativity. To me, when you have time, you today have the ability to not only think fast, but also think creative. And I think if you use that responsibly, it's going to work for you. But if you're going to be, lazy about it, it's going to impact you because that body of work is out there.
Completely. Ashish, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It's really interesting hearing about how you're approaching this future proofing and also how you're evolving what you're doing as a business. So thank you for your time. If you want to hear more ways to reinvent your B2B marketing, we are running our next episode, and that will be about building community in the workplace. Look forward to seeing you then. And thank you very much.
Thank you, James. This was so much fun.